All right, welcome everybody to New Spaces tonight. My mic was off the whole time. I'm sitting here, uh, just trying to figure out what's going on here. But I hope all is well. Hope everybody is staying warm and doing good. And yeah, without further ado, Brian, how are you?
Doing very well. Just kind of just too many things are happening at once. Is how I would categorize this in terms of world events. In my personal life, I'm fine, but I'm just been literally stunned for the last 24 hours with everything with the confluence of events.
Yeah, me too. I think tonight was actually a proper night to actually get in and start talking about things because not only did the Epstein files get released, but we had 11,000 more pages of the JFK release that were supposed to be released yesterday, which it was documented that they were. However, if we go in there, we can't find them. So, welcome to the life of a JFK researcher.
Yeah, I'm wondering because I know Jeff Morley and the Mary Farrell Foundation have been very involved with with the committee, and usually, you can find the files in two places, both the National Archives and Mary Farrell. And in Mary Farrell, they kind of set up where it's more user friendly. They kind of break it into categories and things like that. And so I'm wondering, I haven't seen anything from the Morley crew talking about this. Have you?
I have not. What's interesting about this is I mean, and I have a question to throw at you, and maybe it's just a really bizarre one, but do you think because they released the shitload of files that they did about the Epstein case that they somehow had some JFK files available?
I think the timing probably isn't on accident because from what I've seen, and I have not gotten into the Epstein files, and not this latest batch beyond the screenshots that I've seen. I've probably looked at about 30 pages of screenshots from different posters, and the magnitude of this, Tim, is going to overshadow the JFK work, except for diehard researchers like us and the research community. It's just so explosive, so damaging, and virtually all of the people being accused are still alive and could you would think could be prosecuted, but they're so wealthy and powerful. Who knows if they ever will? But I think what I'm interested in, Tim, is in these 11,000 new files that have been released on JFK. Is this some of the bigger stuff that we've been clamoring for years, and beyond the life of this committee, and that's why given that everyone's going to be going nuts over the Epstein releases from yesterday, for quite a while, is that the time they'll say, okay, here's the juicy stuff on JFK?
I think it's a possibility. I mean, look at it. I mean, I think you brought up a really good point about how this is just absolutely overwhelming when it comes to all this stuff coming out. Just from like the little things that I've seen, I mean, it's pretty bad. And there was like, I guess, millions of documents that they've released. So I don't think they've even scratched the surface yet of what they've been able to see. So what I will say is that maybe I think somebody, I'm hoping, I cross my fingers, was able to just say, oh, while we're releasing this, we're going to go ahead and release some juicy stuff on JFK. It's kind of like something that I posted yesterday. I said, man, since they're releasing all these Epstein files, I mean, fuck it, why not just release stuff
Yeah.
on this on the JFK files? Because the fact is that I mean, look, right now would be the opportune time. I mean, if there's something really damaging in there, you might as well have something. I mean, something really damaging going on, and it's the Epstein files. So I mean, if there's a document in there that says, okay, well, we were observing Oswald and we admit that he was a patsy, or or we had some people in Dallas that were shooters from Europe or Alpha 66, or we had this all documented. If we get that stuff, and I just wrote a blog on my Patreon, is that if we're able to get just that type of transparency, we can walk forward and have that black cloud dissipate because it's really overriding us right now. It's really bad.
Yeah, because see, I look at JFK. There's this writer. I don't know if you've read any of his stuff, Tim. Peter Dale Scott,
Mm-hmm.
and he talks about deep structural events in our country, in which is like deep state emanated events, things like the JFK assassination, MLK, RFK, 9, and he includes 9/11 in that. And I would imagine, using that logic, you would include the COVID thing, in that as well. The way it changed our society. And the way I look at it is like the Epstein files that we're seeing now may be the culmination of things, because that stuff is so bad, Tim. Both major parties, celebrities, billionaires, that it is going to make people question our entire system. They're going to question the entire system. Does the whole system need to be changed, brought down, heavily reformed, or whatever approach you'd want to take? But I think I have long said that the source, the thing that put us on the road that led us here today, happened on November 22nd, 1963.
I
That
agree.
you know that is when we as citizens lost our voice, where our votes no longer mattered. They were never going to give us after they killed JFK, they were never going to take a chance on giving us a true choice in terms of candidates for president or even senators. Everybody was going to be vetted from there on out. Anyone who was going to even be a finalist, a Republican or Democratic nominee for president, was going to have to kiss all the right rings.
Mm-hmm.
And that all started when the shots rang out in Dealey.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I believe that our world changed forever that day because, obviously you had one. I mean, you've heard me talk about this before several times on my show, and then also last week, is that he was pretty much the lone man in this whole situation that was fighting against the beast, right? And I always call
Hmm.
it the beast because it is the beast. It's a culmination of different power structures that are there that are trying to run this world, and unfortunately they got their way. And since then, it's been whoever's influential in either pop culture. And you nailed it. I mean, I think there needs to be either a reload or a revision happening in order to really. I mean, and that's the thing. There has to be apprehension on their part because I mean they control the world right now. And I hate to be that conspiracy tinfoil guy, but I mean, if we can't see that, then we're absolutely naive.
Right. Yeah, and it's just, you know, it was a pure coup d'état on JFK that day. And Jeff Morley put something out the other day, or him or one of his researchers, put something out about the Russian dossier, where I don't know if you saw this, where is the Russians have documented where Robert F. Kennedy, uh, had talked to them shortly after, had talked to like an intermediary between the Soviets and us, and to tell the Soviets that his brother was done in by a large political conspiracy. And so I mean, this is like, just weeks after his brother had been killed, and like RFK was smart enough to know that publicly he had to keep his powder dry, because he knew the only way he could get his get back with them, would be to win the White House for himself. And he would not win the White House if he began screaming conspiracy from the word go on his brother's assassination.
Absolutely. And it kind of makes you wonder also, right? That like, why is the Kennedy family so quiet about everything post that? I mean, was there some sort of, other than RFK Jr., I mean, you're not getting a lot of, members of the Kennedy family coming out and saying, okay, yeah, there was a conspiracy to kill, obviously, JFK. And it's really unfortunate because at a critical time like this, we could really use a Carolyn Kennedy. We could really use, her son Schlossberg. We could use all those type of people, but they're just trying to keep it quiet. And while I get that, and I understand why people do, I mean, why they want to keep quiet, they probably want us to just stay away from it. Um, I mean, you would also think that maybe they all also know that what happened, and they just want to keep it quiet to themselves. But I think the old adage is like I think as us as human beings in the United States, we've seen so many bad things happen, whether in our personal lives, whether it's death of a family member, a parent, um, somebody really close to us. So we're resilient people, so we can actually deal with news, right? I
Hmm.
mean, and I don't understand again what could be so bad that they can't be transparent about this assassination, other than the fact that we had our own domestic terror group brought to you by the military industrial complex, the CIA, Joint Chiefs of Staff, and maybe some other entities. I mean, that would be the only thing. And look, I think most of us have a pretty good idea that's what happened. So if you just break the news, that's what happened, then I mean, we could again move on. I hate to sound like it's so simplistic, but I mean, we have to get that transparency in order to really truly move forward.
Yeah, and given the fact, I mean, given what was released yesterday on the Epstein files, at this stage, I like, for one thing, I am positive that the main players, the ones who, from the people who, ordered this to happen or asked that it happen, to the people who planned it, to the people who actually physically carried it out in Dealey Plaza, if they're not all dead, they're like 95 years old now, and so none of them are actually going to be, no one's going to go to jail for this. No one, that's just not going to happen. And so, but like I was saying, the people who are being accused in the Epstein files, they're still, by and large, I think Robin Leach may, that guy from Lifestyles of Rich and Famous, he may be dead. I think I may have heard he died somewhere. I'd have to look it up. But everyone else is alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
I mean,
and they have to stand and be held accountable. To what degree I don't know. I know what I wish it would be. But whereas on JFK, those folks are dead. They've been dead.
mm-hmm,
And,
mm-hmm.
and so why you would hold that back now? And like for me, like I was saying, the way I look at it is the JFK. That's the primary source event that led to all of this mess and bloodshed and heartache we have today.
Yeah, it sure has. And it also, there seems to be some sort of like step system that you have to have in order to really, you look at it in the music industry. I mean, like you've heard stories about people who have had to, you know, play for pay. It's really sad. And the entertainment industry, we hear, horror stories about Hollywood. Obviously, you mentioned earlier, like you got to play along the game in politics in order to be a candidate.
Hmm.
And so, the residuals of the November 22nd have absolutely been clear as day. And I think it's really an important thing to just, I mean, we have to move past this because I mean we're human beings, man. I mean, like what the old adage about, like, America, working hard for your keep. There's hardly any integrity there for the upper echelon of people who are really out there right now that are part of this whole narrative, and it's pretty sad.
Yeah, and so I'm hopeful in those 11,000 pages. Now to be clear, in the Epstein files, they released 3 million pages. Now some of them, a lot of them are still partially redacted. There's still some names blocked out, but the story, the body of these emails and depositions and grand jury testimonies, the stories are intact where they're naming names. It's just the names of the people talking, and who they're talking to have been redacted. And that 3 million, and then the DOJ held a press conference either late yesterday or today saying that, hey guys, we held back the worst of this. We're still holding the worst of this back. And so, good Lord, what other horrors lie in store, to come from these Epstein files in the
Well, also
future?
you have to think about the pending lawsuits that some of these. That's why some of these are held back, right? So, like, I mean, you can have this ex celebrity right now that has a pending lawsuit about not getting their name out there, and maybe that's cause for some of the delays as well. So we don't know. I tend to like to stay away from any name calling in those files right now for our protection.
Oh, sure.
Just because I don't want you or I to get any legal ramifications from that. So
Oh, yeah, that's why I've only been talking in general terms. I don't
right,
think I've named anybody in there yet, but
right,
and
right.
and no, but no, that's a good flag. But like in terms of the JFK files, the 11,000 that were released, I'm once they show up, in the National Archives or Mary Farrell, I'll be very anxious to start looking at them.
Yeah, me too. And we'll see where we're at with that. I mean, as you know, there's a lot of roadmaps to get to Dallas, right? So I had eyes wide open on my show, our show rather. Last what was it, a couple days ago, and we were talking about Charles Willoughby and his roadmap to Dallas, but obviously we don't think that he was really that involved in the assassination, but the people that he knew, like Jack Cannon, and of course the story of Colonel William Bishop. That stuff blew my mind about
Yeah,
their affiliations and how New Orleans came into play and what have you. Um, God, New Orleans was such a crazy, battlefield. Not even a battlefield. What do I call it? Like New Orleans was like a centralized area for either plotting or to get to the president. Really.
a literal hive of activity.
Hmm.
And oh yeah, New Orleans. In fact, I think, was it you? Somebody was talking about, there's somebody who does a really good sightseeing tour in New Orleans, saying, like, here was Guy Bannister's office, and here's where Lee Harvey Oswald was, got into I guess, a fist fight with some anti-Castro Cubans, and, it does a really good tour there. But yeah, the road to Dallas. Whew. Yeah, I mean New Orleans is big, but but then there's the Mexico City angle. There's just a lot there, and somebody once categorized it though. It's almost like a wilderness of mirrors.
Hmm.
Is how they described it, because some of it, what's real, what isn't, what is just a reflection of something else. So.
Yeah, I mean, what is real and what's not real? I mean, like that seems to be the common theme for a lot of this, right? Especially post assassination and where we are today, right? You get the we didn't. I know I wanted to talk about the theories last week, but we didn't really get a chance with Chuck being on. But the theories that people have in general. I mean, while they can stand on that hill, I still think, again, like without really proof and documentation and anything like that, I mean, I think we're all just kind of like, okay, well, we pieced this together, so this is what we believe, and what's makes sense. But obviously, to the more bizarre theories that we hear about, like the Greer and all the stuff that we talked about last week, we can, eliminate those pretty easily, right? So
Hmm.
um, but I think where we get lost in the weeds is like the more main characters of the situation. I mean, you have to look at, like, let's say Lyndon Johnson. Okay, a lot of people think that he was part of like arranging the assassination. I tend to fall into the category where I don't believe that. I believe that he was part of the cover ups section with Hoover,
Hmm.
and I believe that it was their job to pretty much get the Warren Commission together and then do everything post that, right? So that I believe that that's the role that he played. But if we're talking about like prior stuff, I mean, that movie Executive Action kind of reminds me of like what really happened. I think it was a really small group of people that really executed this out. The more I'm researching this more and more and more, the more I'm starting to think that. But Brian, I do think that there was a council of people that were aware of what was going to happen in Dallas.
I do too. I think because like I was mentioning, you look at everyone that was absolutely in our different industries that was furious with Kennedy or thought Kennedy dangerous or hopelessly naive, dangerously naive. And from the oil industry, the oil execs in Texas, H.L. Hunt in particular, were just absolutely beside themselves when Kennedy was threatening to take away the oil depletion allowance. He obviously Curtis LeMay and Lemnitzer and other Joint Chiefs they couldn't stand him because he was trying to deny them Vietnam, and also, I don't know if you saw those State Department documents where they briefed him trying to talk him into allowing them to launch a nuclear first strike attack on Russia in late 1963, and he
Mm-hmm.
basically threw them out of his office and said
Mm-hmm.
that's the craziest thing I've ever heard,
Mm-hmm.
or words to that effect. So you had the Pentagon plus the defense contractors who always stand to make money off of things like Vietnam, who were mad at him. No nuclear first strike on Russia. Really got like Curtis LeMay and Lemnitzer upset. And like the people on Wall Street, because like he also pissed off the steel industry. One of the first problems he had to deal with in office was a steel strike. And he did not, like past presidents, automatically 100% side with the steel industry. He told both the steel industry and the union, you're both going to have to give something and get this worked out. And whereas the steel industry was encouraging him and expecting him to totally come down on their side and try and shut the union down, and he wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
do it. And in
Mm-hmm.
fact, he threatened the steel industry with hearings. He was basically saying, I can make your life very miserable if you don't give some concessions to the union to try and work this out.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people were upset with him. A lot of powerful people who aren't used to being told no. And so yes, I totally agree that they all weren't intricately involved in the assassination, but I think they had all come to a consensus that a change had to happen and happen soon. You
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, like, I think, I mean, if so, since we're talking about this, and since people can know I mean, 'cause I'm open-minded about the assassination, but if I were to depict like who was really behind it, I mean, what was the most influential thing for me and book for me was The Devil's Chessboard. And I just, I mean, out of all the things and all the patterns that have happened down through history, it is hard for me to pass on Alan Dulles not being involved in some
Oh,
capacity.
absolutely. Hmm.
And so, I mean, I think that he is one of the main culprits. And regardless of who else was responsible, at least if you start looking there, you could start seeing the smoke come from the fire. And and you could be looking at the Joint Chiefs too. I mean, they have an audio recording of what you were just talking about. There is an audio recording of Kennedy basically telling the guys to get the hell out of his office,
Yeah.
because that's what they wanted. And you're absolutely right. It was different, different amount of flurry of factions that were pissed off at him. And if you're looking at war to make money, which is what they were doing, I mean, they saw a golden opportunity again to bring, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, to distribute drugs in the United States.
Yes, I agree.
That and that was their plan all along. And if Kennedy put the kibosh into that, then it's almost as if like Kennedy would never lived even past 1963 whatsoever. They would have got to him no matter what.
Well, yeah, I mean, in JFK and the Unspeakable, And the thing is, that book is such a powerhouse. And
Hmm.
and one of the things I love best about it is the bibliography. It is added to my TBR, my to be read list. I don't know if I'll live long enough to read all those books, but I'm gonna try. His source material, and and that's where he gets into it. It's like Abraham Bolden, who was the one who kind of uncovered the attempt in Chicago. Who was like, huh, disgruntled ex-marine, possibly, Thomas Valley, you know, set up to be the patsy, and they picked up a couple of dangerous-looking characters at a motel outside Chicago the day before. Apparently, they got drunk and got a little too rowdy. And got they people they were thinking that they might have been who were supposed to be the shooters. They got picked up, and so the Chicago deal didn't the Chicago attempt didn't happen, but in that book it says Chicago, Dallas, Miami. Those were the staging areas. Chicago was the first try, Dallas was the second and sadly successful try. But if like Dallas had unraveled for some reason, he was going to do an outdoor event in Miami after that in December, and they were going to try yet again there if they had to.
That makes sense. Hey, Charles, you're on the line with us. How you doing, man?
Hey, thanks. Hey, I never heard that angle, and I'm just wondering if you can give me a little more detail on what you said about selling drugs in the United States.
So what basically for background, and Brian can help me out with this, is that the Vietnam War had opiate distribution, right? And um, Gary Webb was able to piece together from not so much Vietnam, but his whole thing was the hoods that we have, the neighborhoods, the quote unquote ghettos that have violent crimes going on. Webb was able to piece together that Vietnam was an area where we would get opiate distribution, right? And so how they were housing that type of stuff was in coffins of soldiers or like just empty coffins to bring home, and that's how they would distribute a lot of that stuff. So it was sort of like our own government was a cartel, really.
And Charles, I'm going to point you to a couple of authors about this that talk about this quite a bit. One great book is, you should look into the Phoenix program in Vietnam. An author named Douglas Valentine wrote an excellent book on it. He has other good books as well, but I would definitely recommend the Phoenix program because that talks about the CIA involvement in it. And also, there is an author you may have heard of him, Peter Dale Scott, who has written numerous books on like the Golden Triangle, in Vietnam and Laos and in Cambodia, where they were running drugs out of, and he gets into like how people like Ted Shackley and David Morales from the CIA, who are also linked to both Kennedy assassinations, by the way, were working, who did extensive work in Laos, especially. Getting drug distribution pipelines set up, and of course, profiting, in a large way from it. And so, just a couple places you can look, Charles.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's also interesting too is and we'll get back to the assassination in just a second, but also chemical codependency in the United States and how they've been able to really sell that to people. There's a reason why prohibition was, outlawed back in the during the 20s areas, and you see right now how bad alcohol affects people, right? So alcohol, drugs, stuff like that, depressants, it really it can really govern a mind from doing what their potential is, and so it's almost as if it was programmed that way to get people addicted and things of that nature. So it's interesting, but I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Brian, but we can move on.
No, you covered it very well, and definitely Peter Dale Scott is someone I recommend if you really want to if you want to do a deep dive on that subject. But also, the reason I keep recommending the Phoenix Program book from Douglas Valentine is if you look at that system of surveillance and intelligence and torture and all the things that encompass that Phoenix program in Vietnam, you can see a line that connects that to things like Abu Ghraib, the rendition program, during both the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, and you can even see elements of the Phoenix program rolling out in what we're seeing in our own streets today.
Yeah, it's so true. So true. Now, one of the questions I get asked about all the time, and I just don't have any answer for, is about the shooters, right? Okay. So, the shooters, I believe that we will never find out who they are. Even, I'm really good friends with somebody who has the theology that they already have it figured out. Um, I don't. I don't agree with that because I just don't believe it's that simple. I believe that any of the shooters that did shoot in Dealey Plaza that day either died months later or they were maybe. I mean, the one guy that I always think about that could have been a shooter, and this is just a very low possibility, is Eladio Del Valle. I think he possibly, because he ended up dying the same day as Ferry. And he was a really, really sketchy character in Dallas that day. But I just got nothing for you in that regard because again, people want to talk Sturgis, they want to talk about E. Howard Hunt, they want to talk about all these different people like the Tramps and all that stuff. But I believe, why in the world would they have? By the way, welcome, Dr. David Fitzgerald. Great to see you on here. I love your takes all the time. But and feel free to come in and talk. I'll invite you to speak if you'd like. But anyways, so my point is I just don't think that that we're going to be able to figure out who these shooters were.
Yeah, Tim, because or at least until we can figure out who was in charge of putting that part together, because like I talked about in the last show, my working hypothesis, which is subject to change as more information comes out, but for a few years now I've been focusing on Harvey, Shackley, and David Morales as kind of a trifecta there, at different levels, and also Johnny Rosselli from the mafia, who was both very close friends with both Harvey and Morales. And so it just depends how Bill Harvey, right now, I think it depends how Bill Harvey wanted to go about it. From his Rome field office position, he could have hired European shooters himself and sent them down there. He could have tasked Johnny Rosselli to, use mob contacts to locate some shooters. He could have tasked David Morales to look through Alpha 66 and get some guys. And was Del Valle part of Alpha 66?
Great question, Dr. Fitzgerald. If you know if he was, I would be grateful if you could put that on the comments section. That'd be awesome. I don't know for a fact. I know he had obviously the network in New Orleans that he was with.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and really close with David Ferry. But yeah, no, I'm with you there. But I mean, like you could also, maybe throw in a very low possibility of Jean Suetre, who had was deported the next morning. Pretty odd for a French sniper to be in Dallas that day of the assassination of the president. And there's documentation saying that he was deported the next day and he was in Dallas on November 22nd. So, I mean, coincidence, maybe, but I don't think he was there for a cup of coffee.
No, not at all. And see, and that could have been somebody that Harvey personally hired, while he was in the Rome office, because and another thing is that has come out about Bill Harvey just recently was about an alias he was using and a lot of unusual travel for the head of the Rome field office or station, or Rome station, to the United States in the period leading up to the assassination. He made several trips to the U.S. in late from throughout 1963, and or actually, yeah, I guess from the summer of '63 on, because I don't think he started at the Rome field office or Rome station until about June, July of '63. And Dr. David, I've never met you, but it sounds like Tim. It sounds like you're up on a lot of this. And so, if anyone has that, I believe I saw a file where he actually didn't start in Rome until the early summer of '63. But in the time between then and the assassination, he was coming to the US quite a bit, and he was doing so under an alias, which, yes, you could explain that as just standard operating procedure for a high level CIA official traveling abroad, that, they would try to keep that low key.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I mean, there's that Claire Booth Luce and Henry Luce connection that's there from Time Life magazine. How that they allegedly they met with Harvey months prior to the assassination, and my last episode we were talking about the connections with Willoughby and the Luces specifically. That in itself is a crazy tie there. It's funny because you get to see like how many people are related to each other before the assassination, and you're just like it just blows your mind. Really,
Yes.
it's crazy. Like I always bring up the Demornschild, essentially being the godfather for Jackie, right? Or like an uncle or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and you just have all these key characters that just know each other. Eladio Del Valle knew Felix Rodriguez, and that's known. Everybody knows that. But just there's a lot. It's crazy, and how it manifested to that day. It just goes to show, and we can talk about Oswald in just a bit. But I mean, that poor bastard. I mean, like he was under something. I mean, and it took some time in order for them to really peg it on him. But yeah, that guy was a sitting duck. Seriously.
Yeah, and it's just and there are just so many angles. Like you were talking about, some of the ones that you don't, some of the approaches to this are laying blame. Because it's like with LBJ. I mean, I agree. I tend to agree with you that most, if not all, of his involvement was post assassination and covering up. But the fact remains, he had some shady networks in Texas, like Mac Wallace, who apparently was his strong arm man, who eliminated some people on his behalf, not related to the Kennedy assassination, just other stuff happening in Texas. And, uh, and also just things, like that stand out to me, like how the Secret Service acted at the airport when they had flown in from Fort Worth. And there's a video of the motorcade starting to leave the airport to start on the route, to delete, through Dallas. And, like a, a couple of Secret Service agents were suddenly told, back off, stand down, you're not working this, including one guy, I forget his name, but he was supposed to be like right alongside the car. And he, you see him in the film staying there, like holding his arms wide, like, what the hell, you know
Mm-hmm.
you're calling me off. What do you mean you're calling me off?
Right,
you
but
know
and then you put two and two together. They were all most of them were out the night before partying. Okay,
Right.
so I
Yes.
mean, it just goes to show, like, okay, and that's why I always say it's obvious. I mean, like this, it's obvious how these certain things occurred prior to the assassination that make you go, okay, yeah, there was definitely something that was other than a lone gunman because I mean, the bag of bullshit that we see, from this story from Gerald Posner and everybody. Nope, just a lone gunman who wanted glory and all that type of stuff. We're incredibly naive if we believe that. I don't. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, it is more than ridiculous. And you just think about the many factors that were in play with it: Secret Service, um, everything. It's just crazy. I mean, especially the driver. If the driver is guilty of anything, it's slowing down to what 2 or 3 miles per hour, or however slow he was going when the shots happen. I mean, like if I even hear a firecracker and I'm a Secret Service agent, I mean, I'm putting that my foot on the gas and getting the hell out of there.
I mean, that in and of itself is extremely suspect. And And then for some of those people, what Bill Cooper and those who believe him, you know, then to go the next step and say, oh well, he slowed down because he was pulling his gun out and aiming it, and no, I don't see evidence to support that. And also, one thing that concerns me, Tim, is that when we do get these these on their face bogus theories that come forward with AI deep fakes, becoming so prevalent now, you know, I'm afraid that unless, except for people who've been following this for years and years, like we have, that videos can come out like I saw a video that I'm sure anyone with a functioning brain would have immediately discounted. It actually showed Jackie with a gun in her hand, you know, and
Well,
look,
the good news is that we had Harold Weisberg, right? And we had guys before that actually really studied this thing to the core. So they laid the blueprint out for all of us to really know what's bullshit and what's not bullshit. And
right.
there's only so many times that you can watch a Zapruder film and go, I mean, look, I mean, there's only so many times, right? So um anything that you see that's new like that, I mean, obviously it's a bag of bogus stuff, so but I hear you.
Well, and the reason it bothered me so, Tim, was that a longtime friend of mine who had never had the slightest bit of interest in the JFK assassination, he suddenly got interested, and he's like, "Oh man, you've been right all these years to be, looking into this." And he goes, "What do you think about that? It turns out the Secret Service guy shot him." And I'm like, "Oh my God." You know, that was
Yeah.
where he chose to start paying attention. And
Hmm.
so then I had to walk him down a long road to untangle that. And so that's what I'm saying is as casual people, poke their noses in here and there, like if there's something really salacious, like the Secret Service limousine driver shooting him, then we have to untangle that mess. It's kind
We
of like,
do, and I think the unfortunate thing is like the story like Hickey, like busting out his gat and like shooting around and accidentally hitting Kennedy, which I think is one of the most stupidest stories I've ever heard in my life, right?
mhm,
But I mean, him and his family sued that book Mortal Air. Joe
yeah.
Borelli, what's up, man? Yeah, my buddy Joe is on with us, by the way. Oh, he just chimed in and left. But yeah, I mean, Mortal Air. That is you want to talk about William Cooper? I mean, that's another bag of like
Yeah.
just garbage, really. So, these theories do come out, and you'll get newer theories. I mean, obviously, James Files comes out, and he's just like, yeah, fresh out of prison, he's just like, yep, I'm the guy who shot him, and I had a fireball gun, and that's what blew his head apart. And you hear this stuff, and while they can be convincing, I think we really know what happened. I mean, like, he didn't do it. And then he goes, on what that one show with can't remember his name, about a couple months ago, and he's just like, yeah, I also killed Mary Jo Capetney. I also killed who else? David Ferry.
Oh
It's like,
yeah.
you mean you can't make this shit up? This guy is crazy.
Yeah, and so and I think some of that may be, not all of it. I mean, obviously people are sometimes doing that to sell a book or to, get, like if I can't be famous legit, I'll go out infamous. I'll claim I did some dastardly deed type of thing. Um, but I do wonder if sometimes the CIA, trots some of this out just to muddy the water, just to sow some confusion and dissension in the
Hmm.
community, to try and get us off the path. But, I'll, yeah, so that's basically all I wanted to say there.
Yeah, I
I,
mean, like, but then you got to throw in the other things too, because again, like, there's a lot of Mac Wallace believers out there, right? I mean, Mac Wallace was affiliated with Lyndon Johnson. We don't know the full truth on Mac Wallace, but I would say it's probably pretty unlikely that he was there with Ruth Ann Martinez and Loy, what's his name? The in-
oh,
uh, um, I was thinking about Lloyd Vaught, the basketball player,
Me too.
but
Yeah,
no,
you
it's
said
not.
Lloyd. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, but yeah. So there was a story for those who are not familiar. That Lee Harvey Oswald was up on the sixth floor book depository with Loy Factor, that's his name. Loy Factor, Mac Wallace, and Ruth Ann Martinez. And Ruth Ann Martinez was the radio lady giving the signal, while apparently Oswald was the bad shot, and then Mac Wallace was the main shot, which again doesn't make any sense to me. You get a lot of those, right? And I feel like what you just mentioned just a second ago was perfect. I mean, a lot of people want to make money off this,
Hmm.
and just to tell their stories. Even like people that were just in Dallas that day spectating, they want to go ahead and be grifters and talk about like, yeah, well, I was involved with this and I knew this person. I mean, you look at Gordon Arnold. I mean, like he's a shining example of like somebody that you know that really wasn't there. And then Gary Shaw, like, God bless that guy, riding the factor of the badge man. I mean, come on, man. That okay, the Mormon photo. I want to say this about the Mormon photo. That it's such a low resolution photo. It would be really hard, really, really, really hard to make anything out of the shadows. I mean, even if you like the only way that I could see that they could do anything is like if they have AI deep enhancement photo project that could actually look into that. But no, they weren't able to. I mean, what they thought, like in the shadows, was a badge man. It's not a badge man. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? However, that photo is really important because I will say this: the great Paul Blow, Professor Blow, pointed out to me that in Jedediah Thompson's book, 6 Seconds to Dallas, Thompson actually points out a protrusion that is behind the grassy knoll area. So it almost looks like the guy is wearing a hat or the figure is wearing a hat. So I recommend that you guys look at the Mormon photo again. If you haven't watched Paul Blow episode that I had on Cipher Past, he does point that out in the slideshow presentation. There is a protrusion that is right behind that area, and it's clear as day. Now I can make that out, but the badge man theory, that's laughable at best.
Yeah, and there was another account that I read about a witness who I believe is. Does the name Ed Hoffman ring a bell with you?
See, I'm on the fence with that. My colleague Tim Fattig thinks that Ed Hoffman's full of it. But then you gotta see that's the sketchy thing. And anybody who's listening on here right now, by the way, welcome Niall and Hanover. Appreciate you both. Um, uh, man, it's really tough for me. Okay, because I just don't know if this guy would actually make this story out of nowhere. Okay. Um, but it's 50-50. I mean, if you're not the railroad guys like Lee Bowers and Hutton up on the bridge up there,
Hmm.
I don't buy into that, man. I don't buy into
Yeah,
it.
because well, part of it was, I saw that account and I looked in Douglas's bibliography in JFK and the Unspeakable, and it shows up. The Ed Hoffman account shows up in a couple of books that he was citing, and some of those books, like JFK books, some are not all created equal. Some obviously are a lot better than others. um and it was, I guess, one of the things that speaks against Ed Hoffman is that he was very late to the party. He didn't talk about this. What was it, Tim? He didn't start talking about it until the 70s, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, again, a lot of those guys decided not to speak out until the 70s, or like, most notably, like at the conference that Joe was just at, there was some guy on there that said that saw, like, Joe's gonna have to tell that story. But see, the problem for me when it comes to these quote unquote stories that come out years later, even if they say that they were scared to come out with it,
Hmm.
why weren't the people that were on Mark Lane's documentary scared to come out with it? I mean, these guys were transparent as hell when they came out with it. Look at Aquila Clemens. You never even heard from her after that. I mean, she was gone.
Yeah. Well, and The only thing that would lend credence to that is like when you look at what happened to Lee Bowers and some other key JFK witnesses who, perished in various quote unquote accidents between then and say the late 60s, over the next few years. That seems very suspicious, but no, you're right. A lot of these latter day folks, you definitely have to walk in the door questioning them. But it was a very interesting account that Hoffman gave, though. I've actually seen activity there, of the gunman coming out, apparently well dressed, and he tosses his rifle, to a guy who disassembles it and puts it in a toolbox and walks away, that sort of thing.
See, I could see that. I could see that. And Joe actually did an episode on this on the Lone Gunman. And by the way, Joe, we're honored to be joined by you, my friend.
Hey, Timmy G, what's up, buddy?
What's up, my man? We're just
I
talking Hoffman there,
I know
bro.
I saw this space show up, and I saw you talking about Hoffman, and I wanted to give my thoughts briefly on it. I'm actually in an Uber back from like a wedding type of thing,
Well,
and
welcome,
but
welcome.
the thing about Hoffman is he didn't go to any authorities. He went to the FBI in 1967. All right, with his account. His own family didn't believe him. And on the Lone Gunman, we like give a lot of credence to like, did you give same day or same weekend type of testimonies type of thing? And Hoffman, and I believe there was a shot from behind the grassy knoll, like 100%. So like I want to believe it. And when we were doing the show on it, like we didn't have our mind made up on it, and we kind of like parsed out the story, and we were like, some of it is problematic. Now, is that saying that like he's a liar? No, not at all. Uh, but the little things like that, like you were saying, when it comes to years and years after these stories, you really have to take them with a grain of salt. And we've been dealing with a ton of them like every week, and including like this mortician we did the other night or last night, I think it was. But you know what I mean? Like you really gotta just. There's so many people that want to insert themselves into this case for whatever reason, and I don't think Ed Hoffman is disingenuous either. Like when I saw the men who killed Kennedy, which was the first time I saw him uh, talk about his story, I believed him like 1,000,000%. But
Hmm.
there's some things that are problematic. Why didn't you go to the DPD? Okay, they didn't understand you because you were, a deaf mute, whatever, right? But like maybe you go what 4 years after, 3 years after. It's
Yeah,
his own family didn't even believe him, honestly.
right. And
Yeah, well,
if I can interject, and then I
Of
look forward
course,
to your response on this, Joe, is that I mean, with the dynamics of what had happened, right? Like the killing of a president, you would think that that day you would actually, or that minute, go to the authorities and be like, look, dude.
he tried, is what I understood.
But
that's the
okay,
story, yes, but there is no record of him trying.
and see that's where like people get twisted on stuff too. I mean, like for not every one officer, there's what how hundreds of other ones. I mean, you could
Yeah,
go to other
Hmm.
like authorities. So like you can try, but I mean, I see
yeah,
what Joe's saying. It's like when you have all that time. I don't know, man. I'm just on the fence like Joe is. I am. I really am.
yeah,
Yeah, the account that I saw or that I read was that, yeah, he went to an officer, I think right there in Dealey Plaza, and tried to communicate with the policeman, and obviously couldn't be understood, and it was a chaotic situation, and the policeman kind of blew him off. And then he went home and talked to his father, or communicated with his father about it, and his father, it wasn't really so much that he didn't believe him, it was more that he told him, if you go to the authorities, you're going to end up getting killed and maybe getting us killed with
right,
you. So
It
don't
was
do it.
actually, I think it was his uncle who was in either the DPD or Fort Worth Sheriff's, something like that. I believe it was his uncle, but close enough, right? Yes, that is the story, right? But the thing is, when you go to the DPD archives, the Texas Portal to History, like everyone and their mother was has like same day affidavits. You know what I mean? Like, um, so and I get it. Like, and I want to believe in Hoffman. I do. I'm just saying when you really look at these type of stories, I don't want to say objectively, but I don't know a better word. It it there are some things that are problematic, right? So
Hmm.
it's like, what do you believe? And that's the problem with this whole case.
Right,
It's like you
and
can't.
I'll add to this, Joe, what you were just saying. So, like, if he had actually talked to an authority, there would be a point where they would be turned back. Like some of the guys, like Hutton, was turned back from authorities, and some of those railroad guys, they were like not. I mean, they were able to give like a brief statement, but they were not able to really get into detail of what they saw, right? So you would have that account with Hoffman that day too, right? Like a generic comment that from somebody just like the Warren Commission. I don't know if I'm off base, Joe, but
No, and honestly, I don't think you're off base, but even his vantage point of where he was standing, allegedly standing, is like a little problematic as well. And like I said, I 100% believe there's a shot from the grassy knoll, like without a doubt. Like, you know, like, but just the problem with this case is it's kind of like a confirmation bias type of thing.
Hmm.
It's like I want to believe it because I know, a shot came from behind there or whatever. But do you have to believe everything just because it's pro what you think? You know,
True. True.
and Ed Hoffman's just one example. You could have 100 examples of people like Ed Hoffman.
well, yeah. And then
And
on the flip side, you got Jean Hill who saw something, but then she expanded her story years later. So
right,
it's so I mean,
right.
you just never know in this pond of fishes that we have.
Right, and I mean, at least Jean Hill, and I know we did a segment on her at some point in the last couple months. It's all a blur, but you can go on DPD Portal Text History and find her same day DPD affidavit. So I put like 99% of my thoughts in that, or belief in that, compared to what she says in the 90s or the 80s or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
it's just, you really got to look at the the earliest testimony, and I'm not saying that there aren't some situations where people were scared to come out because of intimidation or fear. Of course there were some of those situations, right? um, but I don't know, man. It's so hard to kind of figure out, and we go through this all the time on the show, and we,
Yeah.
like, most of the time, just throw up our hands and are like, who knows, like.
And real quick, Joe, I got a question for you. I know you're on your Uber ride, but
It's
your
okay.
thoughts on those files being released yesterday, and they're not even on the National Archive right now.
Oh, I I am not aware of that, to be honest. I am packing to leave for Italy tomorrow. I just left a wedding. What files were released yesterday?
So there was 11,000 files released yesterday quietly under the massive, obviously, the Epstein release yesterday. So
Oh,
there
but
was
not
a
JFK.
no, they were JFK, 11,000 JFK at the NARA, and
On the NARA website.
well, they have it documented that they were there. However, when you go on there, you can't find them.
What?
And
This is the
But
first time hearing this. Hold on, sir. Hold on for a sec, sir. Tim. You
yep.
could just drop me off right here, sir. I appreciate it so much. And I hope you have a great night, Muhammad.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you
buddy.
very much.
All
Have
right.
a good night, sir.
You too. Sorry, guys.
Good night to you, Chris.
Tim, do
Let me
you
get.
think, Tim, was
Yeah.
this one of those mixed releases? Because I
Thank you,
remember
sir.
there was an
Thank you,
MLK
man. I'm
release.
gonna. Yeah, I'm gonna do the tip after I get off this.
Yeah,
Right.
I do. I will. Yes, I agree with that. I think that this may be a mixed release. I think you and I started the show off, Brian, saying that we both believe that it could have been just maybe a residual release that possibly happened. But like, I mean, I want to see what's on those damn documents
Because
because again, if it's that important, I mean, well, it's not important because we didn't even know about it. But I mean, the thing that blows my mind is that if they were quietly released, that could have some impactful shit on there.
absolutely, because it just came to mind because I remember it was either an MLK release or an RFK release where people started looking in the MLK files and they're like, "Whoa, this is a JFK file. This whole section is JFK files," and it was all stuff that had already been released. It just got mixed in, and so I'm wondering if we need to look at the Epstein files to see if there's some JFK files
That's a good point, Joe.
mixed
What do you
in there.
think?
Uh, I 100% know what you're talking about. I think it was the MLK files that had a bunch of JFK files mixed in them. I don't know if JFK and Epstein are gonna like completely inter. I'm not sure if they're gonna be JFK files in the Epstein releases. I mean, I hope so. I'm just not super optimistic about it. But yeah, that is one of uh, um, their kind of ways of doing things, right? They just like they try to mix you up as much as they can. You know, that's one of their strategies. So I mean, it's not the worst thought, but like again, like it when we were searching the 2023 files, and we were doing our Martin research, you could search Martin and you can come up with everything. Now, the most recent files, you have to have a RIF number, right? To do it. You can't search by topic or name or something. So if it holds the same trend, it's going to be extremely hard to go through those and find out if there are any JFK files in there. I wouldn't be surprised, but it would be a huge task to undergo, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and it kind of makes you wonder what's in those files, though. I mean, I know that's like the $1 million question. It's like, okay, what is in those files that made them quietly release them? And I you never know. But obviously, I would like to hope that there's some breadcrumbs in there, right? I want some more Underhill document type stuff. I want some more Schlesinger memo. I want that type of stuff that's unredacted for sure.
And I want more Harvey stuff and Shackley and all of that too.
Yep. Yep. So, Joe, you've got episode 380 that just came out yesterday, A Tale of Two Morticians, and they can find you at the Lone Gunman podcast. Excuse me. Yes, it's on YouTube. Also, check out their Patreon as well. And, but yeah, is there anything that I know you got to get going here, but is there anything that you want to share with us or want to have a take on?
No, and excuse my dog in the background because I just got in and she's crying. But because she was alone for 6 hours, but as you could hear her. But no, I just wanted to stop in and say hi, and I have a lot of love for you, Timmy G, and this was like the first time I was able to catch a space live, and I just wanted to pop in and say hi. Sorry for the background noise and me being in an Uber and all this shit, but I just wanted to talk JFK after like 7 hours with my girlfriend's family for a couple of minutes.
Well, absolutely, my man. Lots of love
But
back
I
to
did
you,
not
bro.
know. I did see some about the Epstein file releases on X. I would, I hope there's maybe. I wouldn't get the hopes up that there's some JFK files because that's just too long. MLK, RFK, JFK, that makes sense that some files would be, interweaved in there. Epstein, I don't think so. I think you could do better. I think you could do more efficient work not doing that, but you never know. I don't know if you could search by name or anything. I'm guessing you can't. By keyword, I mean, keyword search instead of like entering a specific RIF number or going through the files one by one type of thing. Uh,
Hmm.
And, and
but
probably another thing is, I mean, I know, like I had said earlier, Joe, that like Jeff Morley and his crew are really in tight with the committee, and I'm sure there's maybe some other researchers. Maybe reach out to those researchers and say, hey, have you seen anything yet? And
Yeah.
where is it?
Well, I think it's just a matter of, matter of just keeping track, and yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where we're just gonna have to wait and see. But yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't have the highest opinion of Jefferson Morley. Ruby, stop. My dog's name is Ruby, by the way. uh, and I did name her that. But I would just say like do your own research and don't like rely on them because they're very uh,
Gatekeepers?
yeah, for lack of a better word. Ruby, stop it.
Well, I mean,
I,
I always feel
I
like
think
it.
I don't know if they're like 100% gatekeepers, but I don't think that description is too off base. Um, and I just like do your own research, think for yourself,
Hmm.
and it's time consuming. It's extremely hard, and like I barely have the time to do it these days. Like all my time is consumed with just preparing for the show every week, which kind of sucks.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
um, just don't trust anyone because there is a research industrial complex. Uh, like, don't I'm a million percent sure of that. And there are people that are in this for money. I'm not gonna name names. I don't need to. And there's an incentive to keep this narrative going and grow your subscriber base and I'm not saying like I'm not trying to like gain more subscribers or anything, but I like if I found the answer I'd fucking come out with it. uh
Hmm.
it's just hard with and I've had some dealings with a lot of the big researchers and they're all extremely they either poo-poo you or they try to discredit you or they try to do this and that and it's discouraging. I know this is not like good news, right? I'm not like bringing like optimistic news here. But it I don't know where I'm going, but I'm just saying like it's I think some of what Jefferson Morley is doing is great and I think a lot of it is kind of distraction, you know. And I think with enough, I think there's a new group of younger researchers, Tim included. Uh, a lot of the lawyers that are involved in the case. Um, I'll say like a Damchek, like Eiler, Matt Crumpton. Great people, right? That really have and like people like Jess Connell and like a lot of people that are I'm kind of like repeating what I said on your show, Tim. But like I feel like there's like a new guard kind of forming, if that you know what I mean, and the old guard is kind of like a little concerned, um, and I don't know, but then again they have all the control. They have the power to contact the National Archives. We had a document we had found, and we are credited on the Mary Farrell website, and we found out about 8 months after uh, that group email with 60, 80 researchers, like 20 which are dead now. We're discussing our research find that Rob and I made without us, without even talking about us. And they contacted NARA and got the clearest version of this document without us. And I found out 8 months after the fact. You know what I mean? So they have abilities, they have the contacts. So when you talk about gatekeepers, it's not true. You know what I mean? Unfortunately. Uh,
Right.
so I don't know. That's why I like talking with you, Tim, and with other people, uh, and trying to kind of overcome this because my only objective is truth. It's not money whatsoever. And yeah, I think that's same thing for you, Tim. And
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you, and I just wish you safe travels to Italy, and I really appreciate your friendship, man. You're a good dude. So
yeah, man, you too, man. And um, I just wanted to pop in and say hi and sorry for uh, repeating myself a bunch of
no,
times and
you're good,
being
man. You're
redundant.
good,
But
and he's on the Lone Gunman, and you can catch him weekly on there. He's going to be on a hiatus because he's going to be in Italy, but don't forget to check out the JFK investigation episode 380, A Tale of Two Morticians. Phenomenal episode, which I recommend everybody watch on YouTube. So, Joe,
well, thank
it's
you.
just thank you for
I
dropping in, man. This
appreciate
means a
that,
lot.
and nice speaking with you briefly, Brian, and everyone else.
Same here.
Everyone else that was listening. Sorry for my rants. I go on rants. That's what I do.
No, I can give a testimony. Lone Gunman podcast is fantastic, and definitely recommend folks listening to it.
Well, thank you, buddy. And I'll definitely be talking with you soon. And I hope you have a great rest of your night. And everyone else listening, and you too, Brian.
All right, buddy. You safe travels, man. I'll text you a little bit later.
All
Okay.
right, buddy. Later.
All right. Take care. All
Night.
right. Bye. All right, man. So what I want to talk about, I want to get into, and by the way, Joe, thank you so much for listening, man, being a part of it. It was awesome, man. So, I want to talk about Croy, okay? And that's the one thing I wanted to really mention on. We hit a little bit of a bit on it last week, but Chuck chimed in and kind of had us talking the rest of the episode. So, what are your thoughts on Croy and Westbrook, and why Westbrook was automatically assigned to Vietnam months later after the assassination, obviously in a CIA position? And then you look at Croy, he's at the scene of the Tippit murder, and then he ends up being in the basement right next to Jack Ruby. And I was reading his Warren Commission testimony today, and he was talking about like he didn't know what time he was there, but he was like defiant that he wasn't there past 10 minutes. But it was like somewhere between more than 5 minutes. The guy was just, I mean, he was a pompous ass on his interview. Um, what to make of that guy?
The whole that and I confess I haven't read that whole thing yet. I saw what you put up there, and I haven't had a chance to listen to your latest episode yet. So if you talked about it there, I apologize. I will listen to it. Uh, but what has been your take on the Jack Ruby end of things? I mean, where like who brings him in? Does that infer a mob connection? Is this tied to Marcello or Quintana ultimately? Um, I don't know because I think Tippett and Ruby are part of a wing of this that I'm not sure is part of I'm not sure if that would connect to Harvey and them or to whoever else or if people or does it connect to LBJ's contacts if not LBJ, some of his contacts there. I'm just I've had trouble making that connection.
Yeah, no, I think the most important document or piece of newspaper or literature that you need to look at is the 1948 document that posts that he was working with the FBI, and obviously the Richard Nixon, what you call it, election group, or elective group, um, about not being, or not being, like something about not giving testimony or giving testimony. But anyways, he was working with the FBI that early. By the way, I want to welcome in Chop Liver and David Coppin. Thank you so much both for listening. We appreciate it. Um, and I, you know, I think it traces back that far. I think the FBI was working with this guy for a long time. He eventually moves to Dallas, starts up his nightclub, and there have been obviously accounts that he was with Guy Bannister and the key characters of New Orleans and what have you. So it wouldn't surprise me that he was definitely a bridge man between either Marcello or Guy Bannister into what happened in Dallas. I mean, that would not surprise me whatsoever. Do I believe that he was from some sort of Jewish mafia that orchestrated this? I mean, I have yet to find any information like that, even though I
Right.
have a close colleague that says that that's accurate. Um, there may be something there to his brother Samuel. I think we have to keep an open mind about that. Um, uh, we definitely have to keep an open mind about Samuel. I don't know too much about his story. Sort of like Robert Oswald, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't know too much about his story, but he was so quick to turn on his brother and really, and pardon my language, shit on his brother as much as he
Mm-hmm.
could. And in my opinion, why Robert Oswald did that was to protect his family. Now, I have some colleagues out there that believe that he was actually the other quote unquote Oswald. Now, this whole John Armstrong's theory, which heavily respect him, I'm really good friends with David Josephs, who works closely with him. Um, it's interesting because I'm going to be talking to John David here in about a month or so, and on one of our episodes. But I mean, I don't know enough. I just don't know enough. And the do I believe that there was a second Oswald at that theater? Yeah, I do. Who was it? I don't know who it was. But there had to be somebody on the balcony. There was eyewitnesses that saw the guy being let out the back. So, I mean, you make of it what you will.
Yeah, and also, have you heard the story of Jack Ruby as gun runner?
Yeah, but to anybody, I mean, most of the people on the panel here, pretty much, or the listeners tonight, know exactly what you're talking about. But feel free to share that with our audience that's with us tonight.
Well, it's not really. I don't know a lot on it, but that Jack Ruby was like running guns. I think what to anti-Castro Cubans. Is that correct in
I
Cuba?
believe so. Yes.
And so like he had that business going on, and like I don't know if any of that's connected to the assassination. It may, Jack Ruby struck me as a guy who, if there was an opportunity to make a good buck, he was gonna, and especially illegally, he was gonna do it. And I found that interesting, is that could be a connection to the anti-Castro Cuban movement, and also if but then you'd also have to mix in the mafia in there some, which is entirely possible. The Johnny Rosselli connection,
Hmm.
to some high level CIA people. So it gets very murky there.
Yeah, it gets murky, but I think you just nailed it there. I think that they had their designated like contacts in certain areas, whether it be the mob, whether it be in certain, factional areas that you look at. I think that's definitely a possibility, right? I mean, I always look at it like this, okay? And I might be crazy, but I just think they had the planners who planned this. They had the executors, and then they had the grunts. The grunts were the
Hmm.
shooters, and I think the shooters, again, like we talked about earlier in the episode, I just don't think they're going to be identified. That's my humble opinion.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
and yeah, exactly.
and the reason why I say that is because why would you want to have your teams that you had assigned to killing the president? especially if you, I mean, why would you ever want to have them compromised? I mean, like this was a probably the highest classified coup of all time, maybe next to 9/11 or nah, yeah, I would say it's pretty high, man. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't think that I was talking to somebody off the air and I said, either they were dead or they were permanently banished from the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I think happened to them. But one thing I do want to talk about is that a lot of people with their theories, they always talk about like this happened or that happened, but we tend to forget how quick the assassination was, right? So it was about 6 seconds, 6 to 7 seconds, whatever you look at it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
The amount of precision that you had to execute that had to be really quick. And like that's why I lean on what you're talking about with Ed Hoffman about like his account. I believe like something like that happened in probably the three areas, right? You had a spotter, you had the shooter, and they had like a rhythm that they were going with, and then they went along with that in that specific time. They had that planned out prior, and that's exactly what happened.
And so I think most people, like, do you think in terms of who was how it was set up, I think most people believe the fatal shot was fired from the knoll. But like, where do you think the other shots came from? I mean, do you think someone other than Oswald was in the depository shooting? Was there somebody tucked under that bridge underpass? I've even heard stories of someone came up out of a manhole cover and started shooting. How do you picture Dealey Plaza in your mind?
Okay, so here's just my thoughts, and if anybody wants to jump in and give their theory or like please do. We have a doctor on with us too. He is brilliant and he could explain it too if he wanted to. But so my thought process is that I think that obviously you had a shooter in the depository. I think you had a shooter or a team in the depository, a team in the Daltex building. Obviously, you had a team over in the Grassy Knoll area. So the problem that I have with the overpass area is that's where all the railroad guys were. They were standing up there. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
how are they going to be like a part of that? They're going to say something and. I mean, those guys were men of integrity, and I told you last episode. They had nothing to really BS about. They just gave their story and moved on, just like Lee Bowers did, right? So they would have said something, and they also would have said something if it came from the storm drain. So the question is, where did that throat shot come from? Where did it come from? Okay. Again, you have the south. Again the South Knoll. Um, do you have two shooters in a position where it's in the Knoll area? I don't know. I have no idea. Daltex building though would make a lot of sense for me because of the angle that you have from the. See, I personally think this is what I think happened. I think he got hit in the back, he got hit in the throat, and he got hit in the head. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Doug Horn thinks that he got hit in the head 2 or 3 times. I don't know if I agree with that. Dr. Fitzgerald, if you want to tell me off air if you believe that he was hit multiple times in the head, I totally respect that because you are a doctor, and I agree with what your assessment would be. But I would think that to me it was more so he got hit 3 times, one in the head, one in the back, one in the throat, and then Connolly's wound was completely separate. None of this magic bullet bullshit.
Right, right.
And that's where I think the Dow text actually fits in with the or the Connolly shot. So I mean, there was obviously the James Tagg. I mean, he got hit in the face with something, right? And then you got the bullet that they picked up from Buddy Walters and that mystery FBI agent. Okay, so I mean, like
And then
they're
the hole in the windshield.
right. And then the guy from that one podcast that they have the I can't remember. Two FBI agents that host the show. They said they found bullet holes on the book depository building. Now, I don't want to speculate about that, but if that's true, then you had a hell of amount of spray that day. Okay, so it's a possibility. You know, I just don't think it was a storm drain, but I could see a possibility. Maybe, I mean, like having that escape route where that the underneath the city is, where you can get away that way. I mean, it's a possibility, but again, I just don't. I can't say it was on the overpass. I just can't say it was, because
Right.
those railroad guys, they'd say something. So
Very true. Yeah. Yeah. I was just throwing that out there because I have heard people passionately argue, the storm drain and the like there are people who, uh, uh, like I sometimes attend Morley's podcast. I've spoken on it a few times, and there's like a lot of theories flying around in there. And so, and I've seen people, oh no, there had to be a team at the overpass. And so I was always more focused on the depository and the grassy knoll. And the other places just seemed speculative to me.
yeah, I mean, I get it. I mean, again, this is coming from somebody who has a completely open mind, so I'm willing to accept where people have like ideas where the stuff came from, right? So the Daltex building, a lot of people can poo-poo that, and I understand that, and I totally get it. And Dr. Fitzgerald, welcome, my friend. Are you there? I th-
Sorry, I was on mute. Hi, Tim.
Hi, man. It's finally good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to.
Congratulations to your Patriots, by the way.
Thanks a lot. We're really excited. I live in New England, so it's an exciting time. I wanted to jump in. When we talk about the wounds, um, I just right off the bat, I think the choreography of the assassination. This is just my theory, but and I'll get into some medical stuff in a second. But I think the plan for the shooting was for one shot to the back of the head, fired from behind. Now, if that had worked, and you just think about it, if the headshot we see in Zapruder 313, if that had been the first shot fired, I don't know if we're talking about a conspiracy today, because it would be one shot from behind. There would be no multiple wounds. There's no magic bullet theory. It would have been open and shut. Um, that's the first thing. I have a problem. Um, I think Kennedy was hit in the back, the throat, maybe twice in the head. My problem I've had over the years, and I've been looking into this case for 40 years. You know, you look at the Zapruder film. Let's assume it's authentic. I don't know if it's been altered. I have no way of knowing that. But let's just assume it's what we see is an accurate depiction of what took place. Well, the wound we see in frame 313 is a temporal parietal exit wound. It's not occipital. It's not the back of the head. That exit wound is on the above the ear, slightly forward. It's not the back of the head. My opinion medically is that, I've been around guns. My theory is that if that's a genuine exit wound, that shot, the trajectory for that shot is not supported by the depository. It's not supported by Daltex. It's not supported by the northern grassy knoll or the southern grassy knoll. Have you heard of? Have you looked at Sherry Feaster's work, Tim?
Yes, I have looked at Sherry's book
Okay,
work.
it,
Yep.
it is compelling, but you know, I think there was a shooter, or there was something. There was illicit activity on the traditional grassy knoll. I I I I don't know if there was a shot fired from there. The trajectory is all wrong for a headshot. It's just
Well, can I bounce this off of you, Dr.
yeah.
Fitzgerald? So, what would you think about? Okay, so we never think about this. What if the shooter, and this is hypothetical. I'm, what What if he was at a much further distance and they used a high-powered sniper rifle? Like we talked about Jean Suetre, right? He was specialized in high-powered sniper work, right? Um, what if that was the case? What if they had somebody that was at a great distance, but they had a powerful sniper rifle?
From where? Where would they be?
Great question. Great question.
Well, no,
And
I
that
no, I agree with you. I think. Listen, I don't know if it was you or someone else said it. This was the most covert action in history. This operation, this assassination. This was so nothing was left to chance. Um, they were using the most sophisticated equipment. There's no question about that. I just think that that headshot seems like, first of all, people say there was a shot fired from the grassy knoll, the northern grassy knoll. If a headshot was fired from there, the left side of his head would have been all over Jackie. Okay. I want you guys, when this is over, to go back and watch the Zapruder film. This is my theory. Assuming that film is authentic. Look what Kennedy is doing at the moment before he's hitting the head at 313. His right fist. It looks like it's doubled up, and it's resting under his chin. Okay, I think he's comatose at that point because I think a shot was fired into his head, a lower velocity round before that, so he's out of it. But if you're sitting in a seat and you kind of reenact what he's doing, put your a doubled up fist under your chin, okay? Your head. If that shot was fired from behind, your head has no place to go. If you look at it like this is a rudimentary example, but like a bobblehead, okay? Take the bobblehead and push it to an extreme forward position. Well, if you hit the back of that bobblehead with an object, it's not going to go forward. It's going to snap backwards. My point being, that head had nowhere to go if that shot was fired from behind.
So, Dr.
Except,
Fitzgerald, let me ask you this,
yeah,
okay?
except backwards.
So I agree with you 100% on this, and I was wondering just in your expertise, okay? So when you get hit with a bullet, do you have the same sort of ripple effect that a punch does? Like, you've seen the slow motion, footage of somebody getting punched and their skin, ripples back, right?
Right.
From a gunshot wound, do you have the same ripple effect?
Well, it's the same. It's physics. It's all the same. It's all the same science. So, my feeling is there's a version of the Zapruder film on YouTube. I think it's, you type in French high quality. I think it's there. It's the only version that's available online where the head moves ever so slightly forward before the explosion. So I think that wound was fired from it was a horizontal position on Houston Street because the trajectories don't add up from the North Knoll or the depository or the Daltex because the wound is such on the temporal parietal area of the head. You just go backwards, and the only shot that could support that wound would be fired from the opposite direction, and that's where the head goes.
So with the Parkland Doctors account, and I know you highly respect them. I've read your posts.
Yeah,
So here's my thing, and this is wild. Okay, I'm not. I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on for a second, and I just want to warn everybody. Okay, when I watch this Zapruder film, okay, and I want everybody that's on this panel tonight, that even the listeners, to go on and watch the Zapruder film. I want you to look at the back of his head, okay? And I've watched this film over and over and over, like Dr. Fitzgerald has and
right.
Brian has. You don't see any movement. It's like a black. I'm telling you, that black mark thing could be an absolute fact. I mean, like I think there. I mean, I don't see any movement from the back of his head whatsoever. And if the Parkland doctors, who I believe are right, you would have saw something exit the back of his head.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Right.
and and so I think It is my personal opinion, and I'll die on this hill. I think there was some sort of alteration on there, and I think there was something placed on the back of that head.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. What I'm saying though is, you what? I mean, I've. Did you see the documentary that came out last year or the year before with all the doctors? And they filmed it for the 50th anniversary, but they released it for the 60th.
What the Parkland doctor saw?
Yeah. Even okay, so McClelland is the number one guy who says back of the head. There's a hole in the extreme right occipital portion of the head. That's back of the head because they can see cerebellum. Well, if they can see cerebellum, that means there's an exit wound in the back of the head. That's not what we see in the Zapruder film. So that lends credence to the fact that the film could be manipulated. That's fine. All I'm saying is, if listen, you could have two wounds in the head. I don't know. All I'm saying is that the trajectory from the northern knoll and Daltex and the book depository do not support that wound that we see. It just it doesn't work. So and then one of the doctors in that what was his name? Sawyer. Sawyer says that the wound is located where we see in Z313. So Kennedy had a lot of hair, and it was a mess. So you know it's something I've never been able to come to grips with. But when I hear a doctor say cerebellum, that's at the extreme rear bottom of the skull. That's not what we see in the Zapruder film
No,
at all.
and Dr. Charles Crenshaw, who I know you respect as well, who died basically stating like, yeah, I mean, like he clearly saw the cerebellum, and he saw the leakage coming out of the back of the head in that from that angle. Yeah, it
Now,
and
let
go ahead.
let's assume for a minute that's a legitimate wound, that there's an exit wound in that area of the skull. I struggled with coming up with a source of that shot. I don't believe it's the North Knoll. Um, it could be from the sewer on the right hand side of the street. And they were using a frangible ammunition. There's no doubt about that. Because just in ballistics, the ammunition that Oswald allegedly used, and I don't believe Oswald fired a shot, but that ammunition does not cause a wound that we see in the Zapruder film. It just doesn't. It's not meant to do that. That's a frangible exploding round that was used, because you don't see that type of wound in the back, the neck, in Connolly. So I don't, and there's, I tell you, I'll put my tinfoil hat on real quick, and then I'll throw it back to you guys. There's a video. They say they found metal. They found uh, fragments of Carcano bullets in the limo. Well, there's a video when the limo's at Parkland. I swear, there's a motorcycle cop that goes up to the side that Jackie was sitting on. He puts his hand on the railing on the door, and he opens his hand as if he's dropping something into the car. I've watched it a million times. It's frightening.
That's crazy. That would probably line up with what Landis was talking about. Am I right?
Well, I mean, Landis said he found an intact bullet on the back of the seat. I think there was a lot of stuff that. Listen, if this is a conspiracy, okay, then you have to believe. If you believe there's a conspiracy, well, you have to believe stuff like this went on. And I personally believe, and this is the last thing I'll say. I do believe. I talked to David Lifton for 6 hours on the phone about a year before he passed away, and he was writing this book, Final Charade. He told me a lot of crazy stuff. In hindsight, it's not so crazy, but you got to understand there were bad actors in Parkland. There was at least one doctor who was in on this thing. There had to be. Listen, this is the assassination of a president. They could not leave anything to chance. He basically told me, he's like, Dave, if Kennedy had a hangnail and he was rushed to Parkland, he wasn't going to make it out alive.
Yeah, I I agree with you 100%,
Yeah, it's just
Dr. Fitzgerald.
this is again, I'm repeating myself. This guy was not going to escape Dallas alive. He was either going to be killed in Dealey Plaza, he was going to be killed at the Trade Mart, or he was going to be killed at Love Field on the way back. He was not getting on that plane alive.
Can I interject him?
Yes. By the way, Dr. Fitzgerald, this is Charles Small. He actually, his great uncle was a member of the originals in the CIA. He's a good friend of mine, so I just wanted to introduce you guys.
How you doing?
Hey, how you doing? I just want to tell you that's the best explanation I've ever heard.
For what part?
The bobblehead, everything you just said.
Well, no. Let me tell you something. It took me again. I've been researching this case for 40 years. It took me, I don't know, 20 years. Kennedy he's in such an extreme position with his head. There's nowhere for that head to go if he's shot from behind, but backwards.
So
He's
yeah, you're you're right. But what I've been looking at is the story that I have, and you have explained a part of it that doesn't fit in so many other narratives that I hear.
yeah, and I'm not saying that it's the jet effect. I don't believe in the jet effect.
No.
What I do believe in is that the head was in such an extreme, rigid position that if there was a headshot fired from behind, it had to have come from a low horizontal position on Houston Street, whether it was, let's just reverse engineer this for a second. If it was a conspiracy and the Dallas police were involved, well, where would a safe place for them to facilitate a sniper team be? Well, it would be either in the old courthouse or it would be in the jail. Both of those positions line up for that headshot we see in Z313.
And
Assuming it's authentic.
What are these places again? Can you repeat it one more time?
Okay, so it would be, my opinion, it would be the position at the corner of the old courthouse, which was closer to Commerce in Houston, or it came from the jail. So it was the building to the. If you're looking at if you're standing on Elm Street and you're looking, let me see. You're looking. Was it north south? You're looking east. Not the records building. The building next to the records building.
Okay.
Okay. In my opinion, one of those two places is the source for that headshot.
Thank you. I'll look into that.
Yeah, on a low floor.
So, if it's okay, Tim, if I explain my angle, I guess.
Sure, that's fine. I don't know how much time Dr. Fitzgerald has, so I
No,
just want to be respectful.
I've got plenty of time.
Okay.
I'll make it quick. So, my great uncle on his deathbed, he passed in 2020. He told me a very long and complex coded story, effectively. But his job was in charge of the President of the United States telephone. His man, Hank Heineman, went head. He worked for AT&T Long Lines. He had a team in the basement of the White House when Kennedy was shot. He met with LBJ in the White House afterward, and all of this information is not only things he told me, but even my mother, who knew him at the time, the whole family knew that these things were happening. The other part was he was one of the very first CIA agents in history before the CIA. It was the OSS. Before that, it was the COI, etc. They called themselves the originals. They were the 38 first agents under Donovan. And within that group, he was a part of the smaller group of the co-op, which was led by Douglas Bazada. And Douglas Bazada knew Rene Dossack, and Rene Dossack told Bazada, hey, he was a part of this huge conspiracy to kill JFK, etc. Flip side of this is that Donovan wanted a bunch of fictional stories told about these originals. He tried to tell the story through Ernest Hemingway. Hemingway was too drunk, so he changed course and used my great uncle to tell the stories through Ian Fleming. The Man with the Golden Gun, which was written in January of 1964, it there's a lot of detail there, but very, very specifically, when the shootout happens in that book, it happens precisely at the exact same time that the shooting in Dallas happens. Not the date, unless you look at it differently, but at 12:30. And the shots were throat, shoulder, and head. And in that, it was the shot to the throat from the front. Obviously, the shoulder is James Bond gets shot in the shoulder, and then one of the guys gets shot in the back of the head by a CIA agent. Of course, in the story, it's Max Leiter. So they actually portray the day of the assassination in that book, and the reason is because Rene Dossack was also one of the originals, so he was portrayed within the stories of Ian Fleming's writings. So your explanation is one of those missing links that I've had in a long time, where it is the back of the head within the Man with the Golden Gun. But that doesn't fit when I hear all these other people saying, oh, it came from the guy in the grassy knoll. And so I've just been sitting here going, well, I don't understand how or why, other than who.
And real quick, and if I can interject,
Yeah.
and I'll let you continue, Charles. Sorry. I mean, always had those questions myself. I've always wondered. Okay, well, I don't really get the overpass situation. I just never got that because again, you had the railroad guys there. You had photos there of all the people that were up there, and of course, again, you had all the people running up to the grassy knoll area, which they allegedly had heard a shot to come from. But nobody's been able to really place anybody there other than that protrusion that Professor Blow points out from 6 Seconds in Dallas. So, I mean, again, we don't know what if that protrusion was just a spectator watching the parade as well. So, I mean, I can definitely see what Dr. Fitzgerald's talking about.
Also, Tim, you mentioned what about a great distance? When you read Wilcox's book about Rene Dossack, they didn't describe where he was, but very specifically, the only actual detail was that Rene shot at great distance. Now, just a little tidbit of the information in the book, The Man with the Golden Gun, the first shot, which is Scaramanga, who's actually portraying Rene Dossack, he shoots a Rastafarian in the throat. And the Rastafarian is actually carrying a sword, which is a type of sword called a Dossack. But I'll leave it at that. Now, I'm just saying thank you for explaining. That has now sort of like closed one of my loopholes of understanding how or why the shot came from the back, which has been so different from what everyone else says.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. You know, these doctors aren't going to mistake cerebellar tissue for something else. It's just there's no way around that. So at the very least, the possibility exists that there was tampering with a few frames in the Zapruder film because you don't even see any blood out the back on the trunk. You don't see anything from that area. And again, uh, something happened on the traditional northern grassy knoll because there were fake Secret Service agents up there, at least one. And even if they were intelligence officers, they weren't there to protect the president. So something happened there. I don't know what, but it just to me, um, that wound that you see in 313 is, it's such a completely separate from what the descriptions are at Parkland. You know, it's for me from a medical perspective, it's a huge mystery. because you have competent, trained, smart people attending the president. And you had a neurosurgeon come in at the end who pronounced him, lifted the back of the head up, said the same thing that McClellan did. So these guys, you can't get it that wrong. But then
Well,
you have other doctors who, when they show you on their head where the wound was, it's exactly what you see in the Zapruder film. So it's bizarre.
it really is bizarre. And then, not to mention, I mean, obviously, you're familiar. You've done. I'm sure you've looked at several autopsy photos in your life, and that autopsy photo makes absolutely no sense to me. And of course, you have several accounts that it wasn't the right autopsy photo. I mean, obviously William Pitzer, who mysteriously passed away. You have other people, especially even the Parkland doctors, that say that that wasn't the same wound that we saw when he was there. And you get accounts from the Bethesda doctors, some Bethesda like bystanders and doctors that say the same thing. So I mean, it's crazy. And for me, and this is my question to you, is like, how in the world were they able to clean up a massive wound like that into what we see as the standard autopsy photos that are available to see?
Okay, well, my opinion. I can't prove this. The autopsy X-rays and photos are completely fraudulent. I mean, the back, the photos we see of the back of Kennedy's head, it's not even. It's I don't even believe it's Kennedy. Where they have they have you can see one of the doctors with the white glove on pulling up something. You know, whether it's scalp and I don't even think it's his head. Um, my Have you guys heard of Jim Jenkins? Have you heard that name before?
In passing, Brian, what do you got? Brian?
Yeah, I'm here. I've heard the name, but I don't know anything about him.
Okay, so Jim Jenkins was he was a medical student at Bethesda at the time of the assassination, and he assisted Humes and Boswell. He was like kind of like their right hand. He did a lot of the grunt work. Anyway, this to me is the entire case, and I'll just be very brief. It proves a conspiracy. It proves the throat wound was a wound of entry. It proves two shooters. Proves everything. Basically, in a nutshell, during the autopsy, they make the Y incision in the chest down towards the abdomen, and they remove all the thoracic organs. They remove the heart, they remove the lungs, the pancreas, all that stuff. Thoracic meaning chest, upper abdomen. They removed all those organs and they sat the body up as if he was in a sitting position because they couldn't figure out where there was no metal in the body. They couldn't figure out. I mean, they knew what they were doing, but anyway, they sat the body up. They put a probe into the back wound. Okay, you hear the story about Humes putting his finger in the back, or that was Fink. I forget who it was, and they could feel the end of the wound. It was a shallow wound. Anyway, long story short, they put this metal probe into the back wound with the chest opened up, so it was hollow. They could see the end of the probe pressing against the pleural lining in the back. What that means is there was no entry into the body for the wound in the back. Not forget the fact that the angle's all wrong and the angle was going down into the body, but there was no entry. So that alone, you argue with a lone nutter. That's all you need to tell them. The wound in the back, there was no penetration into the body, meaning it didn't exit the neck, and that bullet didn't hit Connolly. And that means the wound in the neck, which Malcolm Perry obviously uh, diagnosed as an entry wound, someone was firing from the front. So right there, that proves the single bullet theory is false. and then you open up Pandora's box and you can do the rest. But that to me is one of the most striking examples at Bethesda. Ironically, the Bethesda autopsy proved the conspiracy. It just depends who you listen to. And in my theory, I agree with Doug Horn. I told you I spoke to David Lifton for 6 hours before he passed away, about a year before he passed away. He thinks that the body alteration took place between Parkland and Bethesda. I agree with Doug Horn that the body arrived at 6:30, and Humes was given instructions by his superiors. In my theory, is that they pulled Humes and Boswell aside and said, "Listen, guys, he was shot in an ambush from multiple directions. This was a communist plot, and for the good of the country, we have to show only shots fired from behind." And that's what they did. So 6:30, the body rolls into the morgue. They clean up what they can clean up. They dig the bullet out of the neck, because I think the shot in the neck was fired. I think I mentioned this on a post, Tim, this week, but when Kennedy got to Parkland, they noticed that he had small superficial cuts in his face. That was probably from shards of glass from the windshield. So that shot in the neck was supposed to have been in the forehead, and it missed or was underpowered. For whatever reason, it didn't happen. Anyway, they dug that bullet out and they took care of what they had to take care of between 6:30 and when the official autopsy started at 8. That's what I think happened.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know, I listened to Joe and Rob last night. About John Liggett.
Mm-hmm.
I think Liggett, he was involved somehow, but I think the main alterations to the body, and there had to have been, had to take place at 6:30. They had an hour and a half to do what they had to do. They didn't do a great job, but they did enough, and they dummied up the X-rays and the photos. There's a fake brain. It's listen. It's these guys were under so much pressure and were under threat of court-martial. They were going to do whatever they were told.
Yeah, and that's exactly because in my neck of the woods, Malcolm Perry moved up to the Seattle area where
Right.
the University of Washington is, and he had stories with his fellow doctors. He shared a lot of details privately with them, and that definitely matched with what you're talking about. So,
One more thing I want to say before I got to run, but obviously there had to have been damage to the back of the head. It's just I can't get, even though I don't see it in Zapruder, based on what these doctors say, there had to be damage. Just look at the back of Kennedy's shirt. Okay, it's covered with blood. Now, if you look at the way Kennedy falls when Jackie climbs in the back of the limo, he falls to his left, but his head, the right side of his face is up. If there's a wound in the right rear portion of his head, just put your hand behind your ear, okay, at the bottom of the head. That's where that wound would have been. Well, if he falls to the left like that, the blood would be profusely flowing out of that wound onto his back, and that's what you see. But just take a look at his shirt. It's just covered from right to left with blood, and the source of that would had to be a wound in the right posterior occipital portion of that head, behind his ear, on the lower portion. Not in the middle of the head, but in the right side, where you have that bump in the back of your skull. Not the protuberance, but to the right of that, low, where you feel the softness in your neck meets the hardness of the skull. That's where I think that wound was.
wow.
Yeah,
Well, Dr. Fitzgerald, thank you so much for your time, and
you got it.
I
Do,
just, man,
hey,
so
I could
we'll
listen. I could go on all night. We'll talk again.
okay, and I'm gonna touch base with you off the air. If you want to be on my show sometime, I'd love to have you on.
That'd be great.
So I'll talk to you off the air. Okay.
Have a nice night, guys. Thanks.
You too, bud. Take care.
hey, Tip,
So how do you follow up with that?
Tim, hey, I wanted to understand what was he describing? Like, what was the wound to the back of Kennedy?
It was Brian. Could you? I'm just trying to. By the way, Al, if you want to join in, bud, we're here, so I can invite you again. So, Brian, go ahead, buddy.
Oh, I was kind of wondering the same right at the end there where he was talking.
So, my interpretation is this. Um, I believe that he's talking about where, okay, you feel the back of your neck, right? You have the soft portion that goes from your neck, and then you have the
Yeah.
hard portion of the bottom of your head. I think that's what he's talking about. That's where the exit wound was.
From the
So he's talking about the posterior area was hit from the entry wound. The exit wound was that hard portion that meets the back of the neck, which is the softest part, up. So it's like the really hard part that you have on your left or your right side.
yeah, but the back, Kennedy's back. What did he? What was he trying to explain the wound to his back though? Where the guy put his finger in a hole. What?
Oh,
How did that happen? How he explained it, and I'm like, I'm not following.
I'm gonna have to. I'll give you the audio on that because I think you and I are gonna be like playing the guessing game on that.
All
So
right.
I'm sorry,
Uh,
man.
Yeah, I think he was saying that it didn't fully enter the body.
So shot from. That's what I heard. That he shot from the back, like the bullet went in and then it just fell out.
That yeah, and that's very interesting because for it to not make it all the way into his body, that means it had to be at the tail end of its momentum, I would think, right, Tim?
Yeah.
So,
So yeah, exactly. And that would make sense for a really cheap ass like Carcano to hit that.
so
You know what I mean? Like it would like because it didn't have so much force on it.
right. So
And from that go ahead.
one of the things that I keep thinking to myself was how that Secret Service agent he described it as being a bullet from a diluted bullet where uh, gunpowder was taken out of it. And one of the
Yeah.
things that I keep thinking to myself is from the book depository, who was shooting from that location was shooting a diluted bullet just to make sure that a preserved bullet from that rifle would get into the cab of the car. Now, of course, he was saying a police officer just came up and dropped one in. But for me to understand with the Secret Service agent and the story about how the bullet from that window was being shot with effectively blanks, like the gunpowder had been pulled out and diluted. And for me, that's portrayed within Rene Dusak's story and is portrayed also in the movie The Living Daylights. So that's always been my understanding that they were shooting a weakened bullet just to make sure that the bullet from the rifle from Oswald's quote nest would get into the cab so that they would find it and say and trace it back to that rifle. And now he's saying that it kind of lines up with that idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Because he did also mention that they did find some metal fragments from a Carcano inside the vehicle itself. So yeah, wow. Hmm. Yeah, I that's really hard to follow up. He was so good.
Yeah,
Um,
he was.
well,
And I have been struggling with the fact that of course my story is the bullet came from the back. And I'm like, why? Maybe they made a mistake. Whenever all these other people saying it came from the front. And he what he said makes perfect sense because Kennedy had a back brace. He was exactly like a stiff bobblehead, and his head was all the way forward, holding it tight. And then bam, the only place it could have gone because his body couldn't even go for it because he had the back brace on. And
Well, and also the other thing I want to mention too is he brought up a really good point, Brian and Charles, that he brought up the fact that he had fists underneath his neck, right? Right before the headshot happened, like he was resting in a comatose state. Okay, and it makes me think, and it just opens up my mind now, and what if he was hit with a lower round in the head, like prior, like, and that would match
Yeah.
what Doug Horner's talking about. So, I mean, yeah, that right there
Well,
blows my mind.
as I recall the Zapruder film, though, he had both hands up towards his neck, like he was trying to deal with that throat shot somehow.
Well, they said, but before, okay, so if you watched after the 313 frame,
Mm-hmm.
you see that he either got hit in the back and he just felt like he just slumping over by her, by Jackie, rather, excuse me. And you feel like his body's kind of more limp. So, that's when I feel like that split second, I feel like he is in a comatose state. I'm gonna have to go back and look at it again. Obviously, now I have a whole new angle at this. But let's rewind a couple of frames back when he gets hit in the throat, though. Okay, when he gets hit in the throat, it's clear it's an entry wound. I mean, to me, I think that's clear as day.
Right, and he has both hands up toward his neck, and like Jackie's leaning over, like she's talking to him,
Yeah.
you know, and that's and see, and that's what I saw that I remember seeing on the Zapruder film. I'm not sure which version I don't know how many versions I've looked at, but he's dealing with that. Jackie is leaning into him, talking to him, or at least looking at his wound, and then he gets the coup de grace.
Yes. Yeah. So it'd be interesting. I guess he mentions this French Zapruder film, which I'll share with both you guys via DM, or if you guys want to do
Sure.
your. But I want to see that because if it does have, in fact, his hands, like he's resting his hands on a couple of fists, then that's interesting because what if he was hit by
well,
I don't want to go to left field, but I mean that's from a well-respected doctor that just came on and talked to us.
Mm-hmm.
the other part is that the throat wound, like I have yet to hear the exact details. So you're getting shot from the throat, and he's right. That was supposed to go to the forehead. It was a miss. But that bullet is still going all the way in. I don't know if it went in and hit the spine and then put him in comatose. Like I'm thinking to myself, that bullet at that location may have simply knocked him out.
Well, yes, I think the throat shot actually put him in a comatose
It,
state. I mean,
I
well,
don't know if it's
it,
possible, but yeah,
I mean, or his body was reacting to.
Hmm.
I mean, just think about it, like, where he was hit in the throat. Just think about like how you would react to it. I mean, obviously, you'd probably be panicking because you have that wound right there in your throat. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know. He just opened up a brand new can of worms. Seriously.
Right. Yeah, because even that motion, because like his elbows are out, and but that could just be a bodily reaction, not a conscious movement on his part. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean,
yeah.
wow. I mean, just
If that throat wound, I always figured, okay, the throat wound went through the back. But now, if that throat wound was what it was, that to me, I'm thinking that's a trajectory directly to the man's spine.
well. Let's not dismiss the bullet hole in the windshield. Okay. And we all
Yeah.
saw the bullet hole in the windshield. Okay. That's quite evident. So we had to figure out exactly which angle that bullet hole came from, or that bullet came from when it hit the windshield. And that's in my mind where the throat shot came from. Brian, you may disagree, but that's my thoughts.
No, and the bullet hole. Actually, I did some reading on this. The bullet hole was to the rear side of the rear view mirror. Very close to the rear view mirror.
Right.
And then there was some debate because there was a Dallas motorcycle cop that claimed he heard the shot, but he said it came from behind that it he heard like the bullet whiz over his head riding the bike, and then hit the windshield, and then hit the curb, which caused an injury, which kicked up, concrete that injured that guy, that injured one of the people. And so you have accounts of, what angle that hole made. And the thing is, we'll never know, because that night they got that car out of Dallas. I mean, or first thing the next morning, before the FBI had even really thoroughly scrubbed the car and gone over everything. They drove that, they transported that limousine. I believe it was to like Ohio or Michigan, to a place there, and replaced everything. And so basically did a complete overhaul on the car. And so it was first noticed at Parkland Hospital when, when they offloaded everybody. A Dallas cop came up to it, and he was looking at it, and then he pulled a pencil out of his pocket, and he ran the pencil through the hole in the glass. And so, but the debate was it did it come from the front or from the back? Because that one motorcycle cop swore that it came from the back. It sailed right over him. So I don't know.
Same motorcycle cop that dropped the bullets, huh?
It might be.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the. Unfortunately, it's really grotesque, and you guys can look at it. I'm not going to post it, but publicly, but it's called the Zapruder French version, and I'm looking at it right now, and he's right. His fists are literally resting underneath his chin where his neck wound is. So yes, that makes sense. Yeah, he has his right fist literally resting underneath where. Yeah, that's crazy, man.
And like his elbows are out.
Yep. His elbows are out, and you could see clearly that, because if you watch the original film, okay, the black underlining is like covering. Yeah, it's covering where his elbows are, and potentially where the fists are. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
the French version that I'm looking at has a slighter downward angle of the black bar, and you can literally see the fists underneath his chin when she's talking to him. Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's that. Wow. You know what's crazy about the French version though? There's still a damn brownish black mark to the back of the head, which there's no ripple effect in the back. And see, this is what I have a problem with. I'm looking directly at the, you know, yeah, you there's just no way in hell. Uh, I recommend both of you guys, if you guys get a second, to go on YouTube and look at this, because I mean it's yeah, the back of the head never there's nothing, that there's no discharge, nothing. It's like it. Wow.
Now, but okay, here's a question, and I wanted to ask the doc, but I didn't want to interrupt his flow. Is that, like when Jackie ends up crawling out on the trunk and she's retrieving pieces of skull?
Hmm.
Given that the skull is on the pieces of skull and brain fragments are on the trunk, and I suppose beyond into the street, um, that should tell us something about angle as well, shouldn't it? I mean,
Oh, certainly, and I agree with you. One of the motorcycle cops, I forgot his name. It was it.
he got
I-
drenched, right?
he got drenched, but he also thought that he got hit with some. He got either hit with a bullet or something. I see, when you're watching the film itself, you can see the reactions of the motorcycle officers, and I don't see a flinch per se. See, this is tough about the Zapruder film, and that's why we have to ask ourselves if there was alteration. And God bless Robert Groden. I have all the
Mm-hmm.
respect in the world for him, but it makes me question. Like it should make all of you question too, because
Mm-hmm.
you look at the Stemmons freeway sign, that glitch in the video, and then you look at the glitch before that, and I get that they had to do things manually back then, but I mean, come on, man. I mean, This should be a standard rule of film that shouldn't have glitches on it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and there's, and I'm sure you're well aware, Tim, there is fierce debate about whether we have ever actually seen the actual Zapruder film unadulterated or unaltered. And so,
I agree with you there.
well,
I agree.
I'm not saying that's so. I'm just saying there's a lot of people in the research community that are really going at it on that very point.
Well, and I think tonight solved our question. Well, maybe potentially. I think if I'm about 85-90% there, I do not think there was anybody on the overpass shooting. I just don't think that's
Right.
possible. So,
No.
um,
What I had heard was that they weren't on top of the overpass; they were tucked underneath. Like where people go to hide from tornadoes on the
mhm,
highway. In that they were tucked up, like in that underneath, and
so do you?
but again, even still, obviously, people standing above would have seen a puff of smoke and heard, God, there's somebody down there shooting. And so.
Well, but what if like you mentioned, Brian, right there? What if there was somebody underneath the bridge area, right? But they had a silencer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't know the smoke detail because I do again, I'm going to go on record again. I trust the railroad guys on the overpass
Right.
that talked to Mark Lane who saw the puff of smoke. Um could have that been something from the train? I don't know. Could have been firecrackers like some people allege, which is ridiculous, maybe. But what about both you guys? What do you think about a possible silencer, high suppressed weapon, that could have been underneath the overpass? I mean, it's possible. I don't know. That's why I always keep an open mind on this. But
Yeah, and one explanation I heard on that was why one of these guys who is convinced there was somebody either like tucked under the bridge in the overpass area was that he thought that the shooters were set up in stages, that you had people in and around the depository building. That was the best case scenario. They get the job done right there, and then the grassy knoll guy and the overpass guy never would have had to shoot. If the depository, and this is all unfurling in like 3 seconds. If they see the car get past the depository, target is still alive, then grassy knoll guy shoots, then the overpass guy shoots. That kind, to where
yep, and
as he moves down
synchronization.
the street, there's
And
there's fire coming at him, right?
amen. Yeah, I agree with that. That's synchronization. Exactly. That you bullseye, Brian. I mean, that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you had to time it to where he was never going to get out of that trap.
Yeah.
Never. So
Yep.
yeah, it's crazy. Oh man, I can't wait to do. I gotta go because I've got some stuff going on at home here. But this has been probably this has been the best spaces I've ever host. Just because of Joe Borelli, the listeners. Kanish, thank you so much. Charles Small, love you, buddy. Got to get you and William back on our show within the next week or two. I know you're going to Disney
No,
World,
no,
or
I
I don't
come
know if you
back
guys.
from that.
Okay,
Yeah,
so we'll work that
yeah.
out. And Big Al, I'm sorry, man. I know you came in as co-host during Dr. Fitzgerald's presentation. I want to get you back on, my friend. So I'll tell you what, if you guys are game, I can try to do another spaces here this upcoming week if you guys are okay.
Sure.
I'll jump
Yeah.
in anytime I can. And Brian, I would love to talk to you more if you're still interested in that story.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, I want to thank everybody for listening. I'm sorry, a shameful plug. I got Ricardo Morales. It's going to be on the 3rd. I got Jim DiEugenio, and of
Yep.
course Paul Blow on the 4th. And then, of course, we got Bart Camp. That's going to be up on the 6th. And also some special guests on the Cypher Past station. But, Brian, I want to thank you so much for taking all your time tonight. Charles,
Thank
same
you.
thing. Kanish and Big Al, you guys are great. So we'll see you guys next Spaces. Thanks again. It's been a privilege. Have a wonderful
Good
night.
night.
Night, everybody.
Good night.